meeting to order. So Major Rose, I'm going to call to order the June 4th, 2024 meeting of the Burlington Development Review Board. We have a few items scheduled on our agenda. We'll work through them in the order they are listed. We will deliberate on these after and reach a decision hopefully this evening. So if you're an affected party, probably check back in with staff tomorrow to see the results, and we'll get decisions out. So the first item on our agenda is Wildwood Drive, 144 ZP 24 159. Is the applicant with us?
Yes.
All right. So why don't you come on up? And can I get you to raise your right hand?
Yeah.
So you put that down for a second. So this was recommended for consent approval. I guess we can get time to prepare a consent agenda. What that means is that the staff recommends that we approve it without taking testimony because it generally meets our standards. Is there any member of the board that can object to that? Is there any member of the public besides the applicant here to speak on this application?
You're online and want to speak to this, raise your hand.
Sir.
No hands.
Okay, so the applicant, is there anything in the staff report you feel you need to address? Have you seen it?
I did see it. Everything was pretty straightforward. It looked like it was all affirmative. I do have a question on the plat. Signature boxes. I have an updated plat here with the boxes. Don't know if you guys want to take a look to make sure it includes everything for that.
I think that's a staff question after. Which is that level. So I'll move that we approve 144 ZP 24 and sorry, I read that wrong. ZP 24 159 and adopt staff's findings and recommendations. All right, Jay seconds. All those in favor? There you go. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is 63 Lakeview Terrace. Is the applicant here? We are. And before we get into it, you'll see in the public comments that I was emailed by a budding landowner, Mr. Ivan Goldstein. I did not engage. I was wanted to disclose that. That would have been ex parte for me to do that. But so anyway, can I get you to raise your right hand? Can I get anyone else in the audience who wants to speak on this application to raise their right hand? And is there anyone on the Zoom that wants to speak on this? Raise their right hand. So if you could repeat after me, I swear that the testimony I'm about to give is true and correct under the pains and penalties of the code. Yes? Yes? Yes.
Yes.
Great. So someone had their hand up online. So this is public hearing on this. If you would, we have the plans, we have the designs. Why don't you walk us through what you're going to do? You know, I see something's pulled up on the screen. Maybe you want direct staff to walk us through it. Maybe you want to show us what you want to do. Floor is yours.
Yeah. I think before we get into the details of the project, my name is Brian Mack. I'm the principal architect of Bird's Eye. And I wanted to address sort of our interest in this project and our passion behind it. And it's a very unique project given that our clients are in their late 80s and 90s. And that's a rare client that we've come across in the last 30 years of doing business at Bird's Eye as architects. And I just want to summarize our passion behind it. And it's all about trying to get Manny, his wife, Barbara, into their home so they can age in place. I think there's a lot to be said about people wanting to stay in their home and make it accessible. And our whole interest in the project was trying to push the limits of time to try to get them into their home with an accessible elevator, a little bit more space to move around in, and sort of give them their community to live in while they age in place. And given that they're in their 90s, there's a big push for trying to get this project to go as fast as possible. We understand, the process of how to get something built in Burlington. We've done it many times. We're very aware of constraints and what we need to do in order to make it work. The project passed through the DAB without much to do other than congratulations on a good project. So I just wanted to put that out there as like what makes this project unique for us. It's been our pleasure to work with Manny and Barbara and trying to give them a more accessible aspect to their living situation. So that I think is pretty powerful in the way that we look at the project and the way that we put the team together. We've had 4 architects working on this project. We've had multiple consultants working on the project. So there's a really strong team behind trying to support Manny and Barbara to be in their home as they age in place. That's kind of what I'm good for. All the details of the project, Andrew can speak to, and Joe is online as well. But I just wanted to put that out there just as an architect and the way that we look at our business and the clients that we take on and how important and special that is to us, given that it hasn't been approached in our 30 years. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood like our effort behind it. Thank you.
So my name is Andrew Chardane. I'm an architect at Birdseye, and would also like to introduce Joe Fisher. He's online with us. He's an architect at Birdseye as well. We're both architects working on this project with Brian on behalf of Manny and Barbara. Scott, would you mind backing up the slides? We can start with slide number 2. You just go all the way back. So we'll give you context here just to introduce the project so everybody's familiar. Then we can go into some Q&A and address a few items. We'd like to just start by orienting everybody. Everybody's familiar with where Lakeview Terrace is, the blue square on the left. I don't know if you can see use the pointer. So the blue square here is the project site on the west side of Lakeview Terrace. These are 3 existing photographs of the home, which the owners have lived in for over 30 years. The project is, as identified in the staff notes, is not on the historic register. The clients have been quite diligent about maintaining this scale with the neighborhood as we look down the street when we get to the next slide, that the character of this home has been very important to them. But again, this is not on the historic register, but there's been a respect for maintaining that the neighborhood feel and scale. Can you go to the next slide, please? So as we began the design process, we'll get into the actual design in a moment, but just wanted to point out some precedent on the street which exists. These are 3 examples down and across Lakeview where you have an older home that remains on the street front with a presence on the street front with a new or contemporary addition on the back, which is very typical of these longer linear lots. That certainly helped set a precedent for how we would proceed with context of the street for designing the project. Next slide, please. This is a site plan of the site. Here's Lakeview Terrace on the right, and the existing home is situated right here. The current proposal does not include any kind of modifications to the existing structure. But because the home is a 1910 home, it is not accessible, as Brian was speaking to. And so the whole objective of our project was to be able to have as minimal amount of impact, follow the zoning code, be able to get access in a challenging, tight, narrow lot with elevator into the house so that they can continue to age in place here in their home. So the driveway remains here. And then there's a accessible walkway that goes towards the back with an elevator located on the back elevation here. as you can see, this is developed, we'll see there's site setbacks here, which were also identified in the staff review comments, that everything has been conforming to the zoning envelopes and all the restrictions, the height, and all that for the neighborhood. In terms of landscaping that's on the site, there are a few items that were addressed during the DAB meeting that are going to be removed on this corner here and just replanted as garden beds to stabilize grading. In addition, on this northern front over here. We could go to the next slide, please. And so we'll get into some renderings here depicting the project. This is a view from Lakeview, looking at the existing house, and you can see just the inklings of the design on the back side here. So this from street frontage, the appearance is not impactful at all. Next slide. This is from the northern side of the house, looking back along the property line where we see the addition off the back side, the hip roof here. Next slide, please. This is an image of the proposed design from the west side, looking back. And as we look at the site plan, the walkway that comes from the driveway comes out and around with an exterior elevator access door here.
Recording in progress.
And a stepped access up into the living space here. There's going to be a basement that's going to be accessible downstairs. So it's essentially 4 stops providing access to all levels of the existing home. Actions. On the left is a photograph of the existing house from the backside. We had mentioned that there's going to be no change to the existing house. So what we had reviewed with the DAB is we're trying to have as minimal impact on the house as possible. But we'll just use the access through the existing bedroom here and the living room here to access the footprint, which is going to extend out where the deck is out on the west side. Next slide, please. So this is another view depicting the west elevation. And we can see here too with this, this is an exterior balcony that's accessible from the second level, which steps back to the roof plane up here. Next slide, please. I just want to point out too that this is an existing ADU that's not proposed to be modified at all.
On the same lot.
That's correct. Yep. This is another view that is depicting the view of the as an aerial shot, just to give some context.
Is that to scale to the extent that the house to the, am I looking west or like I'm looking east there, right? So the house in white is like the house to the north.
That's correct. Yep.
Is that to scale?
Yes. So this makes our way through the design presentation. I just want to address in the staff comments, there were a few conditions at the end that we just wanted to make sure were spoken about just prior to release of the zoning permit. There was a EPSC plan that was produced by the professional civil engineer on the project, and it's been submitted to the city that's currently under review. So that to mitigate stormwater during the construction process. So there's a whole plan in place for that. There will also be a post construction stormwater plan that the engineers will be involved with to mitigate the water that will be collected off the roof and come down through downspouts and collected into a dry well on the site. So that was condition 1A. Condition 1B, we had submitted back to the city the requested information on the lumens information for the exterior lighting. And I think this is good to point out here that the client has been sensitive about maintaining it and meeting the city's guidelines on light. So there's not a lot of exterior lights. There's a few exterior recessed cans up here. And then also on the underside up here with a few step lights down the stairs for safety, as well as downlight over the elevator access door on the exterior, but all downlights, no building sconces. Condition number 2, with all new construction required to meet energy guidelines. We know that's a condition that will be met with the construction documentation of the project. So with that, we'd like to take any questions that you might have, and happy to go through anything else for you.
Questions from the board? I have a question. So I was looking at this, there's a fence on the north property line, and I understand that correct. Yeah, the existing house is quite close, and the issue is what, 5 feet off the property.
That's correct.
And is there a fence on the property line west of the house? So
Could we go back to the site plan?
because it's no. It's
It's an existing photo of that.
Yeah, so we can switch between some photos and then the plan. So there's an existing fence that exists on it's right here along with the red on the north side of the property that is existing. And continues along to the west, to the western side of the property over here. So that view that we were just looking at was from the backyard looking towards the.
And so that's an existing fence that's going to remain.
So that is the intention with the contractor, is to maintain the fence without taking it out during construction.
And how tall? So it looks quite tall in your rendering.
It's an existing fence. Yeah, if we could go, could we go back slide, maybe one more? Maybe it's
There's a shot of the backyard that shows that fence at the existing conditions.
yeah,
I think it's forward, actually.
yeah, let's go. It's the dual photo render. So if you go forward a few slides.
Yeah.
So
So you can see the fence.
Here it is. Right.
that's just remaining basically.
The intention is to have fence remaining. That's correct.
And
So I'm just making sure I'm seeing this correctly. So the green in the behind the like shrubs and plants there is the existing fence and would be basically the same footprint as the one that's slightly more olive in the proposed elevation. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the fence that's shown in the renderings is that fence and is not, the intention is to not remove that fence.
Okay. And it's not being extended in any way. It's just the exact same footprint as it is now.
That's correct.
To that end, and I apologize for being late. On the slide just above this, the rendering, it does seem to show that the fence and the house are in line, but on A200, it would appear that they're not in line. And I was wondering if you noticed that discrepancy and whether the intention is to keep it in line with things.
So that's a good question. I don't know, Scott, if you have the permit document set accessible, or if we're able to zoom in on that other proposed site plan. Maybe we can zoom in on that. So it's a good question. There is so this is the building line right here. So the fence is.
Is that adequate or you want more?
I think that's good. As long as I keep the hand steady here. So the fence continues from the corner of the house towards the west, and there is a jog in the fence towards the property line here. So I think that's the the change in plan that you're referring to. There's currently a gate at the neighbor's yard that exists here, and then the fence continues towards the west along the property line.
And I'm sorry if you already addressed this before I came in, but there was a comment about the relationship of the massing of this project to the house on. Have you considered that at all?
Are you referring to this house specifically?
Yes.
The design of the addition was driven by its context for getting in an elevator into the rear of the building. What drove this is the necessity to not undermine the existing foundations here. And so that's what drove the program for driving the elevator out off the face of the existing foundation here. In terms of the design of it, this is really the only location that we are able to extend the footprint of the building. So that's what drove the program.
Yeah, I've got a quick question for staff. I don't need, I think you're recommending approval, but it seems like the staff report skipped the recommendation provision. So I just, you put the conditions in, I just want to make sure we have staff's
Shame on me if I
recommendation.
didn't do that.
Try that imagine.
Yes, yeah.
I have a question. Could you just explain a little further about the window battens, how they work? What is that? I didn't quite get what that was about on the north and south sides.
Thanks. You want to take that?
Just expound on that a little bit. It just looks like a blank wall.
Well, it's not a blank wall. It definitely has an aperture to it so that the battens are, solid than the glass and solid than the glass. So it's basically creating a privacy wall on that north side. And then it's sort of mitigating the idea of having window coverings on the inside of the house. So it's providing some shade and some privacy as well. It's sort of an effect where the architecture, and the light sort of coming through, the light patterns and the shading can change throughout the day, and it sort of creates a dynamic sort of interspatial play in that space. So a lot of what Manny and Barbara were liking about some of the architecture that we've done and why they reached out to us is that they liked a lot of those scrim walls that we have been sort of like playing with in our architecture and our language and how we express things. So a lot of what we were trying to do is create a sort of a solid idea that was continuous and harmonious with that palette of, board and batten. And it just sort of plays itself where there's a solid and there's a void, and it's this interplay between positive and negative space.
And they're pretty much stationary, they don't open and close.
No, but where we have egress requirements met through these deck sliders and doors that we have. But those windows, they're operable to the inside, so the European style, so it can swing.
And I think it's a good point to touch on that that the siding is all cedar. This is all wood cladding that's on the building.
Any questions for board? It's a neat project, like on the street side, it's so. Not so here, maybe. Street side, yes.
Do you have just a street front to back rendering, looking at it from the street? Can you just pull it up? There's obviously some trees that are missing in that rendering if you look at it, but thank you. So the flat roof line doesn't exceed the peak of the current roof.
That's correct. It's below the existing peak.
Sure about it.
And that's not like to be a deck of any sort, it's just a roof.
Just a roof.
Yeah.
It's just the roof. The roof structure is designed and intended for solar, for future solar. So the loading has been accounted for with PV renewables.
Is the machinery for the elevator, is that gonna be on the roof as well, or is that something?
All of the machinery for the elevators contained within the hoistway. So there will be no exposed machinery on the rooftop, bulkheads. The addition is going to have heat pumps, and so the condenser unit is going to be at grade level, so it'll be visible.
Okay, well, I know we have a member in the audience that wants to speak on this, so why don't we give them that opportunity? So are you more comfortable there, or you want to come up?
Either way.
So why don't you tell,
Actually, if I'm here, I can speak with these guys if that's okay.
typically you speak to us, you address it to us, but if you're comfortable there, that's fine. So just introduce you, sworn in, introduce yourself, and tell us who you are, where you live, what your concerns are.
Hi, I'm Ivan Goldstein. I accidentally emailed AJ thinking I had no idea he was on the board.
That's fair enough, appreciate that.
Okay, can I borrow your laser pointer? I have some critiques. And can we look at the plat, please? Okay, first of all, let me preface this with, I understand the beauty of aging in place in a home. I'm all for it. I think there are a number of ways to go about this. This is one way, but there could be other ways that are less intrusive on me. Let's start. The existing, where is this thing? I see the little dot. Oh, there. I can't see because the reflection. The existing fence ends here at the end of my driveway. It doesn't extend any further, the 10-foot wall. There's a secondary fence that was also permitted that's not clapboard, that's just up and down. It's a bit haphazard and it wasn't even properly faced. The ugly side was facing my house. It looked like in the rendering that your proposal is running this 10-foot wall, how far?
The proposed,
Extension of the wall.
Which wall?
The 10-foot high wall that ends at my driveway in the later renderings well, we can just go to the renderings.
so you're using the fence?
They-
The fence.
So
Yeah, well,
It's a wall
It's a
view,
fence.
but just.
Yeah.
for-
thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
we'll call it a fence. Thank you.
We understand your perspective.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then go to number 7, please. Oh, wait. Here's the fence. It ends there. Okay, then there's a secondary fence that's 2 feet lower, at least. And if you can go to plat 7 or rendering 7, whatever it's called. So looks like it's proposed to continue running quite a ways at 10 feet high.
It looks like.
Is that correct?
Looks like the fence runs the whole way of the deck.
It's the existing fence.
Existing photo.
But it doesn't.
Are you saying that's not an existing fence?
There's a fence here. It's not that tall. It's about this high. There's a fence along the whole property.
Okay.
Okay, now, to number 8, please. No, actually, I need to back up to 6. There, okay, so this is an inaccurate scale. From the house to their property line is about 2 feet. That's my property, up to that 2 point. So it doesn't look like that. Okay, let's go to 7. Again, please. You'll notice in this rendering, maybe that's just the way that architectural renderings are done. There's no attention paid to the house next door. I've got 4 windows over here that this will essentially wall off, kind of the effect of putting plywood on them. Okay, number 8, please. Again, there's no reference to the windows. And the perspective makes it look actually low. It's only 10 feet with the 5-foot setback and 5-foot setback.
So the concern is that the massing and the design on that side creates a bit of a flat wall.
Yeah. In front of 4 windows. Okay, to number 9, please. Again, this perspective isn't showing the windows. These two are matched, almost equal sized. So, you're looking at that angle. Sure, it makes it look a little bigger. There's no mention of the windows. It's smack up blocking the windows. And I'm curious about the choice of that illustration because it makes it look really different from what it's going to be. All right. Thanks. So my question is, how long will the 10-foot fence extend? Again, here we go. That's past the deck. It looks like it keeps going. How far is that wall going to go? Okay, so then the existing fence was approved in the 90s or something like that. Our current standards are a fence needs, especially that high, needs a 2-foot setback to be able to not cross onto my property to work on it. Is that right? Standard fence?
There's no dimensional setback requirement for fences.
It's kind of materials.
I mean, when I was looking at the fence right up for the DRB, it looked like it needs a setback, which would then offset the rest of the drawings. And math. Okay, then my question is, the plan is for a full basement starting, if the basement's over here, that's 10 feet from my house and it's in sand. And I'm curious if there's any engineering requirement, because my other neighbor had a basement put in and 2 of the walls collapsed while they were building. Not the house, the walls of the excavation. So I'm curious, who's responsible for potential effect on my property of building on sand? We've all played in sandboxes. Now those walls collapse. Okay. And I'm curious, is there an engineer going to sign off on the excavation? The other thing is excavators are rather large. That's only 5 feet from my property line. How's an excavator going to turn around? Sure, they'll take the fence down, but they're going to be encroaching on my setback in order, ostensibly, to build that basement. And I'm curious about that. And then the other thing I want to say, again, I understand the sentiment of aging in place. There are other things that could be done with that house, putting some beams and opening up the original house to make it more accessible. There are other types of elevators that are not so massive, requiring that sort of, it seems like the excuse for massing the building is the elevator, but there are other types of elevators. That's all I guess.
Do you want to respond to those comments? Do you want to share your thoughts about that? And maybe the board has some follow-up questions after that.
I think I mean, we can address the fence. The fence, we're not proposing to do anything with the existing fence.
It's still gonna press us. I know.
Oh, yeah, yeah. sorry. I can see your
Yeah,
reflection in this glass.
yeah, here, thank you.
Yeah, so again, we're not doing anything with the existing fence. It exists, it runs as long as it runs.
Is
It
it
goes.
8 feet high?
I don't think we ever measured the fence.
Is
Yeah.
it like over 8 feet?
It's pretty descriptive in terms of like, you can see the underside of that soffit
Yeah.
is probably 10 feet.
Okay, so
here,
it's-
so
it's quite
it's
tall.
pretty high, yeah.
Yeah, the existing site plan does not say its height, yeah, but I think it's in that.
So again, we're not dealing with that fence, we're not touching that fence, we're not extending that fence, it's just there.
So sorry. So the porch on the plans, it did say replaced in kind. So that is just referring to the section of the fence before it buffers out and then goes down. Because it does say replace in kind on the plans, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so the note on the drawing is essentially, the intention of the contractor is to not remove the fence, if at all possible. And the note is there to say that because of its proximity to the excavation limits, that should that have to be replaced, it would be the exact same fence going up in the same exact location, replacing
Okay.
it.
what about the code?
The thing with,
Sorry, I don't-
just to address the fencing code, because it's an existing fence that was permitted before, it doesn't matter what the current code is. The fence is there, it's permitted as it is.
Okay,
Any comments on the sand, soil types there? Direction there is portions you have to take for excavating, so.
I think it's also an outstanding condition or sign off on any, so. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a legitimate concern, but I think it's one that we've already covered, conditions. Assuming Bird's Eye's architects has to deal with that as well.
That's right, so with the professional civil engineers on board, professional structural engineers on board, the general contractor has alluded to that as being a general condition, so they've consulted the site works company that's going to be doing this. And that they have a plan in place for placing shoring blocks as they're excavating in order to retain the sand on that line as they're going. So that's their level of expertise. We know that they would sign off with the necessary permits.
So they use essentially a stabilization mechanism during the excavation.
Exactly.
Can you comment on the window, on sort of the north facade and the blocking of those windows to the north? I mean, we have some standards that there's no right to light there in Vermont, but I would like to hear you as an architect discuss sort of the design of the north facing facade.
I mean, we could pass this drawing out. I'm not sure why it didn't get loaded into the carousel, but we are showing some representative windows because we knew that was of a concern and we wanted to make sure that we were addressing those windows on the neighbor's property. So. I mean, our sensitivity around everything that we do in the way that we design is important to us in terms of the context of the situation, whether it's a neighbor, a facade on a street. We're taking everything into consideration and trying our best to be as sympathetic to all of those constraints that we're up against. When designing a second story that needs to have like a footprint this large in order to accommodate the program, there is without a doubt, a neighborly sort of situation where you've got one mass of a project next to another mass of a project. Our perspective on it is that because most of what you're looking at out of those windows is angular toward the lake and not like immediate to your neighbor, the views to the lake are still there out of the front two windows. And maybe even out of the other two, I don't know, there are 4 windows on that facade. But all of the elevational views are angular to the lake to the west and not necessarily back to the south. So we extended the program as far as the program wanted it to go, and it basically sort of paired up with the neighboring footprint. So, our sympathy around like not blocking that view, I don't think we're blocking the view unless you're looking at your neighbor directly south. So yeah, we took that into consideration.
I'm looking at the Google Earth to get a good sense of the window fenestration there, so I can see that some of the south facing windows are already facing the existing house, which there's no change there.
Yep.
The back addition does have some windows which you show, which may be impacted. We'll talk about that, but I understand.
That portion of the adjoining house that's closest to this project is itself an addition.
Yes,
When was that added?
it replaced a 1.5-story garage 20 years ago.
Any further questions or comments from the board? So with that, I think we'll close the public. No, I think the only other person online was on your team.
Yes.
So with that, I'll close the public hearing and we'll deliberate on this tonight.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is to ZPS 24-3, 270 Pine Street. Request to amend master sign permits to approve sign for rack and road and blade sign. It's you. Is good evening. All right, 1 second. So can you guys raise your right hands? And anyone else who wants to speak on this online? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct and the pains and penalties of perjury? Yes. All right. So, I think we have a pretty good sense of what you're trying to do here with this blade sign. I'm trying to really focus us in on the issues that the city points out in their staff report. Have you seen that?
Yes, I'm sure I've seen it.
Okay, well, so,
Can we start with the kind of way that Birdseye did, like a little intro here?
you can, I'm not sure theirs was.
Steve
They like to do that.
the plans, sitting with the esteemed Henry Glazer, sign painter, maker extraordinaire. Thank you for.
So why don't you just quickly remind us what you're trying to do?
Soda plant, that's about 45 tenants. For purposes of this meeting, the soda plant's master sign plan was something that Hendrik put together in 2020. And that effort to we just did this big renovation, let's bring some continuity to this whole assemblage. It's actually two separate addresses, 270 and 266. They're joined, so you can walk from one to the other internally. For the soda plant purposes, we call it all the soda plants, and we call the master plan those two addresses. We've got tenants upstairs and down. There's 7 buildings cobbled together to create this soda plant, and we've got tenants upstairs and down. Most of the upstairs tenants are artists. Some of the upstairs tenants are public-facing retail dependent. And so we have a request from an upstairs tenant in the building with the rhinoceros, like 270 building, to have some visibility to the public that is as prominent as the visibility that that business downstairs has, 30 odd. Because to get to the upstairs business, you have to go through the 30 odd entry. So the 30 odd entry is in fact where Rack and Ruin gets their publicity. They will out on the door for the hours, et cetera, and you go in 30 odd and you go upstairs to the only public facing business to 30 odd. And so 30 odd would like to create a more prominent visual branding on the face of that building. And so as requested.
Talking about the Pine Street face.
Pine Street face, yeah.
It is,
Yeah, so,
for a while, they had a large banner or something facing.
right, so it's interesting, I went through the master plan because it shows pictures of all the things that we had. And I crossed out all the things that are gone, which are a lot, including non-conforming, no permit applied for things. So those are gone. And yes, there was a big banner on the side of the building, and they've since, with a permit, fortunately, put wording on the side of the building, on the south facing. So if you're driving north, but when you're driving, your eyes don't look at the facade of these letters that are on the face of the building. It's not a permanent sign. So it's really okay, when you're driving, your eyes are at eye level, at street level. And so that street facade is where the branding typically happens for a retail organization.
And so that's what the request for blade signs, second floor.
Right, the rub apparently is that a blade sign for a second floor business is not permitted. And so variance or an alteration of the master plan.
If I may, this is Mary's project. Mary,
Yes, it is.
so can you just quickly catch us up on the points you make, just so that we have it?
Surely. Molly Conant made the application with Hendrick for a single blade sign for a second floor tenant. And I explained to them that that was not an allowance. Under Article 7, that blade signs were limited to first floor tenants. They reminded me, and I had to do some hunting to find the master sign plan because it was issued for both addresses. The only mention of a blade sign within that master sign plan was for 30 odd, which had already been permitted. And there was a reference to brand
Apology.
Yeah, you know the word, I don't know it. From the staff report and the findings of fact, there's no mention of any second floor tenants as being permitted a blade sign.
Yep.
If brand
Anthropology.
was issued one, it was not with the knowledge of the project reviewer. Similarly, the area sign, the wall sign for Rack and Ruin that was permitted is far larger than Article 7 would have allowed, which leads me to believe that the reviewer did not understand this was a second floor business. But it was permitted.
And that's that large
A
wall sign.
large wall sign on the south. So within that master sign plan, there was no allowance or inclusion of flexibility for blade signs. That master sign plan allowed flexibility in the location and the height of wall signs. So I suggested to Hendrick, I said, you can ask it ain't getting, but you can ask, you have a master sign plan. However, the flexibility comes in location. It doesn't come in area, and it doesn't come in allowances. Master sign plans are only limited to flexibility and location.
Just so I understand, Mary, so the way that I read this was that at our discretion, we could approve what we're looking at here as part of the master sign plan, not if there were a one-off application, because it's the amendment to master sign plan. Do I understand that correctly?
As a standalone request for a blade sign, it is contrary to Article 7. Master sign plans are supposed to be consistent with Article 7. And the master sign plans are going to allow the flexibility and the review of compatibility and those specific specific items that are mentioned in part 2 of the sign plan. I'm sorry, from Article 7, the master sign.
And Article 7 is extremely limiting on what is allowable.
Prescriptive is the term.
So, but I mean,
I mean, we've had this issue before, so I just want to bring it up again, because the second floor businesses is an issue that I want us to address. The code change, but it's like, we're talking about,
Yes,
Specific
we'll talk about it more tonight under another project, but master sign plans are an opportunity for property owners to present a compatible and a consistent plan for signage for one location or for multiple locations like the university, where you'll be looking for consistency in design and an avoidance of clutter.
so it sounds like with some judicious review, we could come up with a way, if we could come up with a way, the blade signs could be accommodated in a way that made sense for the side of the building or second floor tenants, if that's a criteria for the project.
The DRB has discretion that we do not.
So sort of a yes.
Well, I mean, the original master sign plan, and at that time, the applicant said they had 5 upstairs tenants who would likely be looking for signs. So if there is an allowance here for a blade sign, then that would be across the board for second floor tenants.
Here,
We're talking about a master sign.
And I speak to a couple things, I don't know how important they are. You're referencing the banner that was non-compliant and stuck up for a second floor during the time that,
It wasn't, but it,
well, I think it was
we know that
referenced.
paper was there.
I think it was
she's
referenced,
talking about the sign, the permitted sign on this house.
the permanent one.
Yes.
Yeah. It's permitted. She's saying it doesn't meet the standards, but you got a permit, so don't
So
say
you're
that.
fine.
I thought that was entirely flying.
We were
Good.
really critical of how high that could go.
So what is this that you're asking for in turn, because as you say, you've got potentially a lot of second floor tenants. And if they all wanted blade signs, you could have
That would be a
a mess of blade signs out there. So
So is that the interpretation of what I'm asking for?
That's what I'm saying.
Is
It's
it
a
blanket?
I think that's the risk.
I think a blanket, I'm not really asking for that. We might have 1 or 2 others in the 40 who would be interested in architect this one. And it's interesting to think about that, like, what's the point of the master plan? Because I've laid in, wait, it has to be black or white, there's like lots of stuff, but none of that's written in, so. And without the ones that are gone, now it's much less cluttered than it was, and many of those that are gone were permitted. So I'm working really hard toward bringing some continuity and clarity for wayfinding, et cetera. With this process, I think that when Mo O'Hara applied for her projecting sign, the one that's over 30 odd right now, it was contingent upon the landlord taking off that big sign on the wall that preceded Rack and Ruins sign that I was under the impression was entirely compliant, so I maybe screwed up there. But anyway, there were a number of like, oh, this and that needs to go in order for her to get her permit. It's like, great, yeah, trying to follow the right path here. So anyway, the goal here is to have clarity and have it aesthetically more appealing than the alternative that I believe is an option that I don't necessarily want to bring up. So, yeah, guess what? We're looking for an exception here. And if anyone else wanted that, I'd sort of be sitting here again. It would seem like it made sense. But if it can be laid into the master plan in some fashion. I absolutely would appreciate that. There's no way the building's gonna be littered with.
So you don't have an outside directory.
We have a couple directories in Windows, but no outside. It's a nightmare. I mean, 40 tenants and only a couple of front-facing facades.
Yeah.
And they do very well. I mean, they're not retail dependent. 20 years ago, they would have been very, but now it's online. So it's interesting. The demand, there is very little demand for outside signage. It's always amazing. So I don't see, there's not gonna be this wave of wait. They got one, I want one. The process of having a line, I mean, I like the master plan to mean something. I'm a little confused because as signs go away, and it's like, wow, that all those things that were referenced are no longer there. Who's keeping track of the square footage that's utilized relative to the street frontage and all that? We're not doing that. The nature.
That's the right answer.
I'm doing that. So it's not about available square footage. In fact, for 40 tenants, there's very little marketing going on. Visual marketing side.
I think one of the things that would help me, this doesn't feel very master planny. I mean, it feels like we're being asked to do a one-off in a broader context where we don't even have all the signs or signage of the existing building in front of us. So it's hard to know.
I can make that available because it is all, make that available. It looks like a cluster of signage. I mean, it's not, I really make that available.
I think that's the goal though of master planning is like, give us a plan that provides some consistency and standards for how you're going to allow signs going forward. So, like 6 blade signs, or here's, one sign with 6 slots and each of our upper tenants gets one of these slots, like something that feels like a plan. Not like not like, hey, we're gonna change one sign, let's come back and change.
In a master plan, is one allowed to change some things, or I was under the impression, regardless, you came back, unless it built the same footprint with the same colors and the same size and everything. Maybe if Tom Will's gone,
Yeah.
hey, maker wants a sign. I'm assuming if it's within the footprint that matches everything in the master plan, we're good. But I'm of the opinion that if it's a little bit bigger or a little bit different, it's back to permitting.
I think that's generally correct, but I think one of the points that we're making is there's a concern by staff, and I think we've heard that here tonight, that, okay, Rack and Ruin gets a sign, now somebody else wants a sign, they get a sign, and somebody else wants a sign, and I think what you're hearing from Jeff is something that I thought myself, which is, why don't we find that out first? Say, hey, look, we need to update our master sign plan, Rack and Ruin wants a 2nd floor blade sign, I'm not sure the city allows that, but who else would want one? What would the signs look like? What's the master plan? I want to amend the master plan for approval for 1 blade sign with 5 slots, identifying the 2nd floor tenants. Or, I've asked everybody and I want 1 blade sign because I'm only going to give it to the person who rents the Rack and Ruin space because it's where its location is and its visibility to the street. I tend to agree with that because I'm uncomfortable making an amendment on a one-off basis and then continually going down that road. We see that happen with a number of large other projects, and I think on a repeated basis, we've tried to tell people, look, collect some of these together and bring it to us, because what ends up happening is things get lost in the shuffle. And then, 4 years later, someone's like, well, I had that under the 6B amendment for building G. And now we're all hopelessly confused because everyone understands the project we've thought about. But so, is that something you'd consider? Sort of trying to figure out a more, because I didn't hear you say, this is the amendment I want to make, so what do you want to make now?
I'm actually more comfortable with the process of what you want to sign. Look at look at the requirements, figure out what's required. Let's make sure it's going to absolutely comply with our existing master plan and the city's prescriptive criteria. It would be an easier path for me to say, yo, Molly, Rack and Ruin, if you get that, that's the last one. There's an argument. It's gonna be easier for a landlord to say, no, what's the last one? Just the same way you don't have a restriction on, you know, how many sidewalk panels can go out there. And I said, master plan's gonna say 10. I'm sorry, we're not gonna go any more than that. More than that's crazy, even though we have all this footage.
I understand.
So anyway, I'd be more comfortable just saying, let's just get one more and call it quits. Because it's, yeah, because I don't have, knowing the tenants, the mix of tenants, the type of work, et cetera, I can't see bringing in a tenant that's gonna say, we're not gonna be a successful business if we don't get a blade sign. I just don't see that happening.
I appreciate that. So you're looking at 2 blade signs,
2 blade signs.
one addition to the one you have.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that may be an option, or I might be more effective and successful in saying we'd like 5 blade signs. But, you know, there's different buildings, you know, it's like how will they look and feel? Are they all gonna be the same? How does that get managed? Does the landlord even manage that?
So I think I appreciate that. I think the board has some things to talk about how we want to handle this. Is there anybody in the audience who wants to speak on this?
Oh, they're looking pretty quiet, AJ.
So we're gonna have a chat amongst the board. So I'll close the public hearing on this. We'll deliberate on it and we'll come up with something here.
Either path.
I wouldn't say it's either. There's more than 2. It's not bad.
Hey, AJ, we have a delayed hand raise from Sharon Busher.
Okay,
Sharon, you're up.
Can you hear me? I'm outside. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Okay. The only thing I wanted to say about this was that the sign ordinance and the master sign criteria were David White's baby. I was on the city council and he developed a Pictionary of signs and what was, and so there was all the dimensions and where they could go. And I felt that it was very thorough. It was overwhelming as a member of the ordinance committee to look at it all. We did go through it, but frankly, I don't remember much except that it was thought to be useful and prescriptive for people coming in who wanted to have signage. Now, I understand that at least what I looked at said that the blade sign could not be anywhere except on the first floor. I don't recall, and I didn't ask Mary in advance why that was. But I know it was quite a few years ago that this whole ordinance rolled out. And if indeed members of the board have questions about the applicability, I caution you, but I always feel that it is sometimes important to go back and reconfirm or change a directive that was put forward a period of time before. So that's all I have to say, except that I valued that for the people wanting to have signage, and I valued the concept of a master sign plan giving flexibility. Now, this is not what's going on here, but the next item is giving flexibility to a developer to have a number of signs and have a ability to place them here and there as long as they didn't violate the overall intent of the ordinance. So that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to give you that past input, and if that's useful, great. If not, you know, I'm your faithful follower and try to inject information that I think might be helpful. Thanks again.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, with that, I'll close the hearing. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Next item on our agenda is
Sign number 2, CPS 24-14, 75 Cherry Street. Request for master sign approval for south building only. Will the applicant take the seats? Bigger construction today.
So they had no job site.
Most is all going. Will you guys raise your right hand? And anybody on the audience who wants to speak on this application, raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes, yes.
All right. So this is another master sign permit, an original master sign permit. I think we're very familiar with the master sign rules at this point. Why don't you show us what you want to approve, have us approve here?
So I think we'll just go with what is in the application and what we're seeing on the screen now. We did just email a supplementary photograph of how things look now if we want some more context at any point. But the project is probably something you've heard about. We've been here before. And we're looking at a signage permit for only this limestone clad portion of the project, which is currently under construction. So there is another significant portion of the project that is also underway with foundation only work at this point. We are not aware, we do not have any confirmed retail tenants, but we're trying to put together a package for the purpose of the master signage permit to have a non-cluttered, cohesive look to the building. And the other reason is because of the location flexibility, and the major tenant of this building will be an AC Marriott hotel. So we had a change of use. There are still residences on the upper floors here. So we're looking for a package to address all the different uses in the project. There is signage for the residences, there's signage for the parking structure, there is signage for the retail. Without knowing what the retail is, we've tried to build in some options to our signs where you'll see there may be a band sign or an awning sign, not both. One or the other. Some even the subdivision of retail space is something that can still change as we move forward. So we basically put a sign over every retail entrance and tried to cover our bases so that this would meet the needs of potentially more tenants than are currently shown in our plans. There are also blade signs included in the permit. All of them have the same color scheme. We're keying our scheme off of the signage standards of the hotel brand. Maybe the biggest thing, things that came out of the staff report are, I saw there was a comment about the residential signage. I think there may just be a clarification needed there. The sign that's way up high for the hotel, which obviously gives the hotel some visibility.
Is that a requirement of the hotel deal? Certain signage?
They have certain signage requirements. They've been flexible in the past, but we're basically going with their typical signage package with preferred signage package with some modifications.
AC Marriott, Montreal.
Yeah, I mean, they have a collection of signage vendors they work with, and they have very tight standards. They've actually been a really good group to work with. Went down to Marriott headquarters at Bethesda to meet with them and see their prototype room and see their prototype signage to get familiar with what their expectations are. But and there was actually a recent change to the signage ordinance, I think, to allow the internally illuminated signs. And the sign that I think Mary questioned is the residential sign. You can zoom in to the facade. It's actually really hard to see the signs, but maybe zoom into the so that only the Bank Street elevation is on the screen, which would be the upper.
I need to take it out of presentation mode then.
Yeah.
It's easier to see in the staff report. So it's gonna blow up like that.
I like to put details in the staff report to direct your attention.
Yeah, there is a detail with it, with a red circle around this one.
Yeah.
So just to cut to the chase while Scott's bringing it up, the intent is for these to be backlit letters. So the light would be on the back of the letter, just providing a glow behind the letter as opposed to something that's internally illuminated. And the light would not be visible. And I believe that meets the intent of,
For the residents or the hotel?
for the residents. The hotel signage is a internally illuminated sign with the light coming only through the letters, which is my interpretation of what is actually desired by this recent revision that allows the internally illuminated signs.
So what am I?
You can, it's this bit right here, the residence is at 130 Bank Street, so those would just be backlit letters.
So this is a generic sign, master sign. But is that the entrance for the hotel residence? Is it the same place?
It is.
Okay.
There's common lobby, and you go in, not really tuned into all the details, but there might be one elevator kind of branded to go to the lobby the lobby's on the next floor. And then the other ones will service the upper floor, but once you're in the building, you can use any of them.
I'm just curious, so I had questions. There's a sign W2, which looks like it was on glass, right? Can I read that right? It was hard to read that. Blowing up, it just sign, it was actually on the Cherry Street sign. No, St. Paul Street.
Oh, that might be the
Maybe on
wayfinding
security.
two signs, so that's the parking entrance sign, so.
That's what I just.
It's a directional sign, and there's a allowance for directional signs up to 2 square feet. Which is what we said in the application, it's we're not exceeding the amount of signage allowed based on our linear feet of frontage or even really we're coming maybe within 2/3 of what's allowable with what's proposed here. But given the tenants we have and the needs we have and the size of the building,
For the hotel sign, you're saying, oh, the illumination only comes through letters, but there are only the letters, right?
right.
So it's just aluminum.
No, it's not just letters, so this sign, the AC Hotel Burlington is, I actually forget what the illumination for that was proposed to be. It's called out on the drawing, and I'm pulling it up myself. So that's not the only sign, the sign on the corner, the wall sign is backlit, and it's a gray background with.
But I was asking about the main entrance.
On the canopy.
Right.
Yeah, that's just the letters, or is there a backdrop to that as well? It looked like it was just letters.
It's just letters.
Letters, but they're backlit, right?
AC Hotel is inline channel letters.
Mhm. I'm not certain whether that has illumination at all, but.
No, I don't think it did.
So the illuminated signs would be the corner boxes for AC.
Yes.
The backlighting
Yeah.
for the residences.
There was one question I had, and this might just be me missing something, but the sign type WI1 is specified as a window vinyl for AC hotels, but I don't see it anywhere on the master plan.
On the St. Paul Street elevation.
Okay.
Yeah, it shows on the elevation, it's that gray stripe across the doors, and it's also in an enlargement or separate view of 3.
Right there. Sign type W1 on the left.
Not W1, sorry, WI1.
Yeah, that was right in the center of the view a moment ago.
So it's the door and window vinyls?
Yeah, it looks like a hotel specific door and window vinyl. I saw the other, so WI2 I saw in a few places, but I didn't see the WI1 actually used anywhere.
You pointed out, if you go back to the main same Bank Street elevation where we were, it may be on this inset, but it's this gray band right there. So it's
Well, if I may, this is an interesting example of the limitations of Article 7 for tenants above the first floor. So tenants above the first floor, we've already learned, are prohibited from having blade signs, but they're also limited in wall signage to 10 square feet. The largest tenant in this building is the hotel. And the hotel is above the first floor, other than the first floor entry.
It's also on the first floor. Right.
Pardon me?
It's also on the first.
It has no exclusive presence on the first floor whatsoever.
Only has an entry door. So the sign ordinance clearly did not anticipate this type of development.
Right. We call it a dump lobby. So you come in, there's just signage to get to the lobby, but it's on the next floor up. I've seen some that are multiple floors up. You go to like the 5th floor to check in and there's some rooms.
Yeah.
below you. Yeah.
So
Actually.
first floor retail, we have signage, band signs for retail that are within the sign plan, but the 80,000 square feet micro save for the hotel is above the first floor.
So we can have a blade sign there.
And I'm very limited in wall signage, so what we've done is we've reallocated the wall signage that would be afforded to first floor tenants and divided it up. We haven't exceeded what they would get. But it's an issue that I think the ordinance I've heard already said needs to contemplate and address, and I can say we've got other projects in the waiting in the wings where it'll also be an issue. So.
I think part of it is this is a development of a free type mixed use development that's really not well contemplated in the way the signage is built for a store. And apartment complex, a strip.
So we go with creative.
I think that's what.
There is
And what better lunch?
Well, I think the other intent of a master sign plan is the way we do the master parking plan, or master transit plan, is to sort of put a box around what we think is appropriate, and then as people come in and amend, you stay within that box. Dave, is there anything else we need to know?
No, they did a pretty good job. They've been working with an interior designer plus Marriott's construction team and our partners, the Jury Group. We were super happy with the package. Didn't see any issues.
Is there anybody online who wants to speak on?
Sorry.
Michelle.
That 10th floor hotel sign, how integral is that into the signage package?
I mean, I would say the upper level placement of the sign is the reason there is one of the primary reasons there is a master signage application, because of the.
I think it's asking how important is it to Margaret?
much like it a lot.
They like it a lot. That's a good way to put it. I think important. I would say it's very important. I would say it's their preferred location for the sign. I would go short of saying it's a showstopper to not get it, but that's certainly what they would like, and we think it is an appropriate sign for a primary tenant of a significant building.
If perhaps that square footage were allocated to Chelsea signs at a lower level. So the total square footage would be retained, but the location would be changed. I suppose that would be a difficult sell, given that it would be more difficult to see from further away.
I think we want the sign this size, and it's well within what we permitted. If it was being permitted individually, it's only the location that varies from what would not require a master signage application.
Plenty if it was lower. No, it kind of
Scale matches out.
balances it, yeah.
Staple left corner. Is there anybody online who'd like to speak on this application?
He's raising their hand.
All right.
Give Sharon a minute.
So with that, I'll close the public hearing. So we'll look at it. Thank you. Go back to job site, Dave.
No, I'm done.
Okay. So we have 3 things.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
So we have 63 Lakeview Terrace. And the 2 sign permits.